Okay, so now I'm going to give you a very quick summary of what we learned. There's two more ideas that we need to cover before we finish Bris Mila. There's a possibility that in the next 2 weeks I'll actually start Bikur Cholim. I was thinking about doing something on Bikur Cholim, which is Parshas Vayera, this week's Parsha, right? The Avraham Avinu is sick and the Eibishter visits him. What do we learn about Bris so far? Number one, what the Rambam says about Bris, Me'usehi ha'arlah, and Gedoyla Mila. You have two reasons why Mila was Gedoyla. The Ma'aseh Moshe Rabbeinu and Yud Gimel Bris. You guys just all did the test, so you know this. Number two, the Medrash. That the Medrash says that the Bris has to fix. But there's a machlokes between the Psadia Gon and the Rambam, how you translate that, the way I taught it to you. The Psadia Gon holds, to use my words, a perfect God will create an imperfect creature that needs to be repaired. The Rambam doesn't want to accept that. The Rambam doesn't hold that a perfect God created an imperfect creature. The Rambam simply holds it's too much for the perfect creature. So the person makes a bris to be mamayed the taiva, to diminish the taiva. Number two, says the Rambam, the reason for the bris, it creates a Jewish identity. And I think there's no question about that. The bris absolutely creates a Jewish identity and a Jewish distinctiveness. And it doesn't mean from a Yidden living in Wilhelmsburg. It means the 16 million Jews who are scattered all over the world. Then we learned, after we finished with the Rambam, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that there's two levels of bris, Mila and Priya, the inner bris and the outer bris. Normally he argues that Priya is done by the Eibishter and Mila is done by us, but he says that when a Yid davens and he gives tzedakah with Mesiras Nefesh, so he's able to Mila and Priya. Number four, we learned the Torah Oyed, also from the Alter Rebbe, who asks the question if Avraham Avinu was Makayim Kol HaTorah Kula. Why did he do a bris? And the Alter Rebbe introduced us to a similar idea, what's called Mila Ha'al Yoina. Now, the last class I gave you was a lecture. And the lecture was about this whole idea that is so axiomatic to the Rebbe, right? The way I put it on the test was the way I taught it to you in class, is I gave you three expressions. Remember, number one, HaMaisa Hu HaIker. Number two, Nisava Kadosh Baruch Hu Liyis Leis Baruch Diri B'Tachtenim. And number three, what's called Bittul HaGzeira. There was a decree that separated higher from lower, and when the Eibishter gave the Torah, he nullified the decree. It was Mevatel the Gezeira. What does the Bittul HaGzeira mean? That we're able to not only use physical things as symbols for spiritual things, but that the physical thing itself is holy and godly. I'm going to say that one more time. The significance, the effect of the Bittul HaGzeira is that a Gashmi Yizdika thing is not only a reminder of a Ruchni Yizdika meaning, but that the physical thing has a holiness. And as I explained to you, this is why, number one, Avraham waited to be told, and number two, when he had to make a shvuah, when he had to make an oath, he says to Eliezer, Evet Avraham, Simna Yotcha Tachas Erechi, which is the worst antithesis of tznius. Why did Avraham Avinu do this? Because the Bris Mila was the only physical item that he had, that the physical had a kedusha. When we have to make an oath today, we use a sefer Torah, we use a mezuzah, because they are called chefza shal kedusha. They're a sacred item, a holy physical thing. Avraham Avinu's only chefza shal kedusha was the bris. Okay, this is what we did. This is the summary of what we did till now. Does anybody want to ask any questions or make any comments? So I'm reading the Sikha. It's on page 9 in your stack. I read the underlined, which means I'm not going to keep on telling you skip to line so and so. Just follow the underlined and you'll be fine. Okay, so you have to know. Here we go. Of them was the Torah der zählt. The Torah tells us, as Avraham Avinu hat sich mal gewen, wenn is alt gewen 99 Jahre. Avraham didn't do a circumcision, didn't do a bris until he was 99 years old. If you look in footnote 1, you'll see the Maimer in Lech Lecha, da be'etzem hayom hazeh, which we learned a few days ago. As fragt man, Avraham Avinu hat doch mekayim gehen die ganze Torah. We know that Avraham Avinu practiced the whole Torah, noch Eiders, die gegeben geworden, even before it was given. Now, Rabbi, I want you to understand. If you learn the Chazal, you find that there were many people who studied Torah. Adam Rishon studied Torah. Noach studied Torah. Right? What's the right that Noach studied Torah? Noach knew which animals are kosher, to take Shiva, 7 of each, and which animals were not kosher, to take Shnayim. So Rashi says, Mikan, Shalom ad Noach Torah. Noach learned Torah, and Chanech learned Torah, and Mr. Shalach learned Torah. But the Torah they learned, if you're familiar with the Tanya that we learned recently, was a mystical Torah. They understood spirituality, celestial things, and on that basis they were actually able to determine what the physical mitzvahs were. But they only learned the Torah, they didn't keep it. They were practitioners of the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Neach, but they were not practitioners of the Taryag mitzvahs. So they studied Torah and didn't do the mitzvahs. The three exceptions to this rule were Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, one of the boys keeps pointing out to me that according to the Ramban, it was only in Eretz Yisrael. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov kept Taryag mitzvahs. Not the people before them, nor their children. It's an interesting thing. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov have a din of Jews. The Shvatim have dinim of Bnei Noach. It's really weird. Yaakov was a Yid. Reuven was a Goy. Yosef was a Goy. It's strange but true that for whatever reasons, and whatever the explanation is, the Aves had a din of a Yid. They didn't only learn the Torah, they were Makayim the Torah. Everybody else not only learned the Torah, but actually, everybody else learned the Torah but didn't practice the Torah. So the kasha is, if Avraham was a Jew, and he kept all the mitzvahs, why didn't he do Bris Mila? When it came to the mitzvah Mila, he waited until Hashem commanded him to do it. Okay, so here goes the teretz. Now, we learned this in the Alter Rebbe. Now we're learning it in the Rebbe. Darf men frie verstehen, says the Rebbe, in order to answer the question of why Avraham does all the mitzvahs, and when it comes to Bris, he waits, we have to explain first dem Unterschied, the difference zwischen die mitzvahs, was die Ovis haben Makayim given, far Matan Torah. What separates the mitzvahs that the Ovis did before the Torah was given, und die mitzvahs, was die Yidden seine Makayim noch Matan Torah, and the mitzvahs that the Jewish people keep now that the Torah was given. That says, to answer the question why he waits with the Bris, we have to talk about this question that I gave you the shir on before. Now I want to make it very clear. The Rebbe in this sikha does not use the language of Bittul Gzeira. He doesn't use the language of a Chefza Gashmis, but he speaks the Higoyin, the Svaras of these things. And the Rebbe says, "Der Kiyam ha-mitzvahs by the Ovis." The way the Ovis did the mitzvahs is given mezer egenim koyach. They did mitzvahs, but it was only with their own power. In other words, the level of the mitzvah. Avraham kept put on film. He had kosher, he had Shabbos, he had mikveh, he had many, many mitzvahs. They have nicht gehabt den besonderen keach momayl of kiyama mitzvahs. The Ovis were able to do the mitzvahs, but the way they did the mitzvahs was only on their own power. In other words, mitzvahs have reasons. Even mitzvahs that we say don't have reasons really have reasons. The Ovis knew the reasons for the mitzvahs, and they did the mitzvahs. The idea that when you do a mitzvah, there's a divine empowerment. There's something godly about it, something bigger than the person. They didn't have that power. Because was der Eibishter hat gegeben zu Yidden. Because the idea that when a Jew does a mitzvah, he's connected to infinity. The Eibishter gave to Jewish people durch sein Tzivoi by Matan Torah, when he commanded us to do the mitzvahs, when he gave us the Torah. So there's Torah, there's the wisdom of God, and then there's the giving of the wisdom of God. The Torah existed from the beginning of creation. Adam learned Torah, Lech learned Torah, Avram learned Torah. But the idea that when you do a mitzvah, you have the power that Hashem gives you, and therefore the performance of your mitzvah has a certain infinite quality, didn't happen till Matan Torah. Therefore, Chach euch die Oves haben getan mitzvahs beper mamish and gashmis. The Oves were different, that they did the mitzvahs, they even did them physically. Haben sie aber nicht gekannt durchdringen. They were unable to pervade, to permeate, to take through mit der Gedusha, the holiness von mitzvahs, of mitzvahs, die devarim gashmi, the physical things, azay, die devarim gashmi, zon werden heilig. Avraham could not make a physical thing holy. For example, it says in Kabbalah that Yaakov Avinu used sticks. It says in Kabbalah, Yaakov Avinu used sticks for whatever purposes. So it says in Kabbalah, Yaakov Avinu sticks was the equivalent of tefillin. But after Yaakov Avinu finished with those sticks, he could have used them for firewood, he could have used them for posts for a fence, he could have used them for anything he wanted. Because the sticks had no kedusha. The sticks were a symbol. They were representing something spiritual. They were representing something spiritual.
What did he do with the sticks?
What did he do? It's a secret.
What did he do with the sheep? He made different colors.
He used the sticks for the sheep. But, so it says in Kabbalah, it says in Arizal, that this stick was ancient film. Why, I don't know. You can look it up. But after he was done with the sticks, there was no kedusha in the sticks because he wasn't able to transform the physical thing. In other words, in plain English, mitzvahs are symbols. People do all kinds of things as symbolisms, right? Your person wears a Magen David around his neck. So you ask them, what does it symbolize? No one is going to think of the Magen David as something holy, and the Magen David isn't holy. It's a symbol. It reminds you of something. Before Matan Torah, they did mitzvahs. They were symbolic. You separate challah, it was symbolic of something. You put on tefillin, it was symbolic of something else. We don't do mitzvahs as symbols. We do mitzvahs because the physical act is divine. And not only is the physical act divine, the physical thing is divine. When you take a leather and you work it over lishma, and you make from it a parsha, and you make from it a bias, and you make from it a tzua, and you make from it gidim, and you sew tefillin, we don't see tefillin as a symbol for something. We see tefillin as a physically sacred object, which is why when tefillin become no longer usable, you don't throw them in the garbage. You don't use them to stuff a bottle. You have to bury them. You have to treat them with respect because there's an inherent kedusha in tefillin. This idea didn't happen till Matan Torah. The idea that a physical thing has a kedusha doesn't start till Hashem gives us a Torah. Until the Eibusha gave us a Torah, the physical aspect of the mitzvah reminded us of a spiritual idea. And again, pre-Matan Torah mitzvahs can be seen as symbols for ideas. Post-Matan Torah mitzvahs are not symbolic, they're sacred acts, they're divine acts. The Aves did the mitzvahs. But the way they did the mitzvahs were symbolic. They could only do the ruchnias of the mitzvah. There was a gezerah that separated gashmias from ruchnias. So they could do the symbol of the mitzvah, but the mitzvah, the physical items. If Avram sat in a sukkah, it says in Chumash ate matzah. Matzah symbolized freedom. Matzah symbolized bread of affliction. Matzah symbolized whatever matzah symbolizes. But you're not going to say that the matzah was holy. You make a matzah today and you make a bracha, shekadishalom is faces, matzah. You say l'shem matzah's mitzvah. The matzah has a sacredness. The physical piece of bread has a kedusha. This is the chiddush of Matan Torah. Now, let me give you the classic language. If you look in footnote 3, the Rebbe brings a part of this, and I'm going to explain to you very simple. There's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim which says l'reach shmonecha tevim. There's some words that I don't know by heart, and then it says shemen turak shmecha. And the Medrash explains, if you have perfume is in a bottle. The perfume in the bottle has substance; you can touch it. Yeah, if you spray the perfume, you have a waft, you have a reach. In halacha, you guys are learning Yeridea. This is very tricky because there's a problem called zeya, which you'll find out in Yeridea. But smell halachically has no substance. Moisture does. But smell alone halachically has no reality. So the Medrash says, the Ovis did mitzvahs like someone who's able to smell perfume. We do mitzvahs like someone who owns the bottle. The perfume is only reach. It has no mamashis. It has no substance. In other words, what I'm arguing is, if you could separate, this is your language, the reach from the zeya. There's no mist. It's just a smell. Now, scientifically, there's no such separation. If you have smell, you have mist, just less of it. But halacha makes that distinction without getting into the question of how. A smell that does not have a mist, does not have a substance, has no mamoshes. The mitzvahs that the Ovis did was like a smell without substance. We own the bottle of perfume. So the Ovis did mitzvahs. They were a wonderful smell, but they couldn't touch it. The physical aspect that was incorporated into the Kiyam HaMitzvah had no Kedusha, it was only a symbol. And I'm reading on. Dakegin, as opposed to, I'm on page 9, second column. Die Mitzvahs, was Yidden seine Mekayim noch Matan Torah. The mitzvahs that the Jewish people keep after the Torah was given. Haben sie dem Koyach, they have the strength. Was der Eibishter hat gegeben durch sein Ziva. When he gave us an instruction to do a mitzvah, he gave it a certain power. What's the power? Zum Mamshech sein Kedusha euch in die Dvarim Gashmi. You can now bring Kedusha into the physical. It's very plain. Avram took the Torah. We were given the Torah. When you take the Torah, you take the ideas, not the essence. When you're given the Torah, you take the giver, the Eibishter. Therefore, their mitzvahs did not change the physical thing, and our mitzvahs do. Like I talked about it in the shir. If you remember the shir I gave you, I talked a lot about the idea of Tchias HaMesim. And I said that in my opinion, I was making a point, every physical thing, not just a person, animal, plant, mineral, that was used in any mitzvah, even a nickel that was used for tzedakah, has to have Tchias HaMesim. Because when you use a physical thing for a mitzvah, that physical thing is not symbolic of a mitzvah, that physical thing is Kedusha. And Kedusha is forever. So just like the body of a person has an eternity, if you did even one mitzvah, like I explained to you that there's been Hagi Yisrael, a baby dies without a Bris, they give him a Bris posthumously. It's Negeh and Tchias HaMesim, yeah. It's Negeh, Poshet and Tchias HaMesim. You do any mitzvah, any guf, that did as few as one mitzvah is an eternity. This doesn't happen because Avraham understands the wisdom of God. This happens because Hashem gave us the Torah. To mamshich sein Gedusha euch in die Dvarim Gashmim, to bring holiness also into physical things, as der Geshem soll werden heilig, the physical things should become holy. I'm reading on. Next paragraph. Von der zweite Seite, on the other hand, Hagam az unsere mitzvahs, even though our mitzvahs, sein in a hechere darge are on a higher level, wie die mitzvahs von the others. It may be true on the one hand that when we do a mitzvah, we change a physical thing. When you separate a little challah, right? I mean, the women do this mitzvah. You don't eat the challah because we're tummy. Challah has the same status as truma. If you eat it, it's iser of misa b'dei shamayim. We burn the challah. That piece of dough that sits in your freezer to let it Pesach, and then you hope it's going to burn and let it Pesach take a fire, even though it's frozen and wet. And of course, you have a freezer full of those. It's a lot of dough.
So you have to burn it.
That's what I'm saying. So you burn it every Friday. Where do you burn it? In your oven. Rabbanim say that it's considered treif, and it makes your oven treif. Don't ask. If you want to be religious, there's a lot of radicals in the world. We burn it with the chametz. So what I asked my wife to do is that she take it out of the freezer. It should thaw out budget. Because when it's frozen and it's cold and wet, it's harder for it to burn. But you can make a fire anytime you want. But the piece of dough is godly. That piece of dough, which we're not allowed to eat, has Kedusha Strumen. It's not a symbol. It's a physically holy thing. It's not physically holy because it says so in the Torah. It's physically holy because it says in the Torah that Hashem gave us. Says the Rebbe, however, is aber dafke. On the other hand, dafke, das was the Ovis have Mekayim given mitzvahs far matan Torah. The Ovis did mitzvahs before the Torah was given. Hat gegeben a Möglichkeit und a Kayach zu uns. It gave a possibility and a strength to us. As mir soll kennen Mekayim sein die mitzvahs and gashmis, we should later be able to do these mitzvahs and gashmis. Was of the Ruf Shed, because it says in the Medrash, Ma'isa Ovis in Labanim. What the Ovis did is a sign for the children. This is oxymoronic, okay? It's dichotomous, if there is such a word. It's dual. It's two sides. We say our mitzvahs are higher than theirs. And we say we're able to do our mitzvahs because they came first. The Medrash says, Ma'isa Ovis Siman Labanim. The actions of the Ovis are a siman for us. The Rebbe has different sichos where he translates the word siman in different ways. Here the Rebbe says, Avraham's mitzvahs I'm able to sit in the sukkah because Avraham sat in the sukkah first. I'm able to shake a lulav because Avraham shook a lulav first. You know why? Because Avraham was so holy and so dedicated, he earned the right to sit in the sukkah. He earned the right to shake a lulav. What did I do? I was born, that's all. Right? In Tanya Perek Mem Zayin, the Rebbe says, the Oves earned to be called Lekei Avraham, the God of Abraham. We were born into Lekei Yisrael, Lekei Aveseinu. We're born Jews. So the Ovis give us a koyach. So what's the irony? On the one hand, they give us a koyach for us to be able to do mitzvahs, and our mitzvahs are greater than theirs. V'bal das the koyach of kima mitzvahs from the Bon. So the Alter Rebbe continues, without going into how this works. Whereas, considering the fact that the koyach, the strength of kima mitzvahs from the Bon, and the doing mitzvahs of the children, turn the page. Kum, page 10 now. Kum von Ma'isa Oves has to do with the Oves. Von the mitzvahs was the Oves haben Mekayim given, the mitzvahs the Oves did first. Says the Heilige Rebbe, der Rebbe hat, therefore it was necessary zum Winzigsten. Zum Winzigsten means at least. The least amount. Ein mitzvah for the Oves, at least one of the mitzvahs of our Oves, Gedarf sein in ganzen gleich, have to be altogether the same to the mitzvahs for Nachman Torah, the mitzvahs we do. The Ovis were on a lower level than we are. Not because we're better than them, but because we came after them. But the Ovis empower our Yiddishkeit. Therefore, in one aspect, they have to be like us. And that's Bris. Let's see the Rebbe Sich. Das heißt, as die mitzvah, one mitzvah, soll mit ihr Kedusha direch dringen dem Dover Hagashmi, even though the Ovis are before Matan Torah, Hashem gives them one mitzvah that is able to direch dring, pervade, take through the physical thing. As allein soll werden Kaddish, the physical thing should have a Kedusha, und die Kedusha soll in ihm euch verbleiben, that the sacredness, the holiness, the godliness should remain in that physical thing, nochen bekayem sein mit ihm die mitzvah, after you do the mitzvah with it. You know, this is very curious and very tricky. Okay? I have a lulav. I used it sukkahs. What happens to that lulav after sukkahs? What's its status? I have a sukkah. Now, a sukkah has two parts. The schach of the sukkah and the walls of the sukkah. Sukkah passes. What's the halachic status of that schach? What's the halachic status of that sukkah? I have tzitzis. Tzitzis has two parts. The beged, the outfit, and the strings. They're no longer useful. What is the status? There's many different levels in halacha that I don't know offhand, but you'd be very surprised. I think the kedusha of schach is more than a stuk of a tzitzit. Could even be the walls of the sukkah. There's different halachas. There's chafza shel mitzvah, there's chafza shel kedusha. How much holiness stays in an item post-use, changes from thing to thing, and the halacha, the dinim are very, very complicated. The bottom line is, when you did a mitzvah, and the item of the mitzvah is no longer useful, like an esrog, like a lulav, like schach of a sukkah, like the walls of a sukkah, the string of a tzitzis, the beged of a tzitzis. So in some cases the kedusha goes away, and in some cases the kedusha remains forever. I believe so. I believe even the walls of the sukkah. Yeah. People throw it in the garbage. This is not my area of expertise, so I don't know, but I believe that even the walls of the sukkah retain a kedusha. For sure, more than the beged. The beged of tzitzis have no kedusha. The strings do. There's different levels, and I don't know all the levels. I don't want to mislead you, you understand? I'm simply pointing out that there's different degrees in the sustaining, the holding on to the kedusha.
After kedusha leave.
Because it was never really there. Medaftas nicht. So the Rebbe says that the Eibishter gave the Ovis one mitzvah, that the Kedusha stays, first of all, the Kedusha pervades the physical thing, and second of all, it stays forever. That's the mitzvah of Bris. Let's read. Und durch der Dazake mitzvah, and through this one mitzvah from the Ovis, haben euch alle zehre andere mitzvahs, all the remaining mitzvahs that the Ovis did, Hagam, they haben mamshech, when they hamshach, not in ruchnias. The other mitzvahs, the Ovis can bring the Kedusha only into spirituality. And the way I'm explaining that word is, they remained symbols. The Ovis mitzvahs, they did the mitzvahs, but the physical aspect was a symbol of a spiritual idea. Ashayches to the mitzvahs for Nachman, they have some relatedness to the mitzvahs we do after the Torah was given. As they give them that koyach, the Ovis mitzvahs give us strength. So makayim zayin die mitzvahs, that we could do the mitzvahs after them. Und mamshech zayin durch ze hamshachas echen gashmias, that bring holiness into gashmias. So the Ovis had one mitzvah, that the physical thing had a kedusha. The Ovis had one mitzvah, where the kedusha and the physical thing remains forever.
Each one of them had their own?
No, okay, that's a really good question. It's a really good question. And if you're looking at Rambam, you can ask a moed and dikakasha. The Rambam says, Avram tikkun tefillah shacharis, Yitzchak tefillah mincha, Yaakov. Then he also says, Avram tikkun bris, Yitzchak was mesaken meiser. Each one has a different mitzvah. Maybe Yaakov get a nosha. But we only say it about bris Mila. So you're asking a very interesting question. And you have to look in the Rambam. This is in the Rambam. I think it's in the Rambam in Hilchas of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Nech. That's how he opens up Pedic Tes of Hilchas Malachim, is that and then came Moshe Rabbeinu v'nigbar al Torah yada. He gives the impression that the mitzvahs that they did were leading towards the shleimus of Torah mitzvahs at Har Sinai. But as far as this sikh is concerned, it's only Bris. So I'm answering your question by saying it's a good question. But I've cooked in a Rambam. Maybe you could look it up if you want afterwards. Sif Beis, page 10, second column. Die ein mitzvah from the others. The one mitzvah of the others. Was hat mamshech wenn gedusha eich in gashmis. That drew holiness also into the physical. Is given mitzvah Mila. Was the commandment for Mila. Die mitzvah Mila zeichen sich ois der mit. What separates, what distinguishes the mitzvah of Mila is was he macht oif kedusha in der davar gashmi. That when Avraham did a bris, not when you do a bris. When you do a bris, it's certainly the case. But when Avraham did a bris, the bris became physically sacred. It wasn't symbolic of something. It didn't mean something. There was a kedusha in the physical act. You know, in the world, they always preoccupy themselves with this idea that Judaism is a religion of ritual. Why does it matter what I do? It matters what I think and feel. And of course, that is so simplistic and so false for reasons I don't want to get into at the moment. But the ultimate answer is because we don't do mitzvahs because of what they mean. We do mitzvahs because Hashem said, do this act. If a person meditates on lulav all day long and doesn't shake a lulav, it wasn't makayim the mitzvah. A person shook a lulav and kam thought a kavana, he was makayim the mitzvah, because the most important thing is the physical act, because of the gedusha in this ma'aseh. By the office, it wasn't that way. With the exception of Bris.
Why was Bris different?
Why is Bris different? I don't know. But it was given differently. All the other mitzvahs Avram took. Avram learned Torah. Where? I don't know. Shem Yeshiva and Avery Yeshiva. But Avram learned Torah that was really a mysticism. It was a philosophy that people had going back to Adam Rishon. They sort of knew the secrets of the creation. But Hashem didn't give them the Torah. They figured it out. We were given the Torah. Avram was given Bris. Avram was given Bris Mila. Und dieselbe Gedusha, number 2, this holiness, bleibt euch oif später, remains also afterwards. So there's 2 points. Number 1, Avram's Bris was a physically sacred thing, or sacred physically. And number 2, it wasn't only for the duration while he was doing the mitzvah, the Bris is holy forever. The pasuk says, "V'hoisa brisi bebesarachem." My covenant is going to be in your flesh. Da soll sein mein verbunden mit euch in eier gashmis dike flesh lebris oilam. That the way a bris is, that the physical situation is a covenant in the physical flesh of a human being forever. And the Rebbe teaches in Yiddish, "Zu a bund was bleibt auf ewig." A bund means a bond that lasts forever. Turn to page 11. Okay? And the Rebbe continues. Men zet zwei inyon. If you examine what I just said, says the Rebbe, you learn 2 different things. Aleph. The mitzvah Mila is to oftan the mever allein. The mitzvah Mila changes the physical organ. Nit nor as der Evid is a mittel. The physical organ is not only a means. Was durch ihm can men mekayim sein a mitzvah. To do something spiritual. In other words, we don't see Bris as a symbol for something spiritual. We see it as a physically sacred thing. Nor the mitzvah is, I'm reading the next underline, nor the mitzvah is to pale it and the ever gashmi alein, the mitzvah changes the physical thing, as though zayin amo or the nit keinolo. That you become, the person becomes a different person because of the Bris. But there's number 2, the mitzvah Mila is nit blois in den Zeit wenn men tu dipol samil. Do not think of Bris Mila as something which is while you're doing the mitzvah, like while you're shaking the lulav, and then you can discard it. Nor sie zieht sich bemeshech dem ganzen Leben von dem Adam Hamol. As long as the person is alive, the Bris is holy. Let's say for the sake of argument, and I don't know if this is true, but let's say for the sake of argument. Yeah? If I use tefillin, and the tefillin become unfit to have a kedusha. If I use tzitzis, and the tzitzis become unfit, the tzitzis doesn't have a kedusha. I'm just saying for the sake of argument. This may be wrong, but I'm using it as an illustration. So one thing has a kedusha begashmias, but only while it was a mitzvah. When it stops being a mitzvah, it loses its kedusha. The other thing never loses its kedusha. That's the second aspect of Bris. Aspect number 1, the physical Bris has a kedusha. Aspect number 2, the kedusha is ongoing. Every second that a person has the Bris, he is a mitzvah. There's a famous medrash. Oh, it brings it here. Look at the next paragraph. Araya of them as mitzvah smils, a mitzvah nimshachas is a gemara. The next paragraph, a proof of this, that it's not only I did a Bris, but I'm gemalet. Every second that a yid does a Bris, he's becoming a mitzvah, is the following medrash. This is what we're going to read. Yeah. As David HaMelech, when Azarayin in Merech, David Melech went to the battle. David Melech was an incredible man. And I wish I had time to give you the drama of David HaMelech. The kitzur advarim is when people are rich, and people are powerful, and people are prominent, it's much harder for them to be pious. David HaMelech was incredibly powerful. He was a great warrior. He was an incredibly powerful man. He was a very, very rich man. He was unbelievably respected. And David HaMelech was, for lack of words, the George Washington of the Jewish people. David HaMelech never gave himself a moment of rest. He never enjoyed the pleasures of his position. His son Shlomo did. We don't see Shlomo HaMelech and David HaMelech as the same. We consider them both righteous kings and the rest, but Shlomo HaMelech had made mistakes. David HaMelech didn't sleep 60 breaths because he didn't want tumah in his hand. You imagine a king, not a yokel from a koilel, he was a king. And he was a real king, he was a powerful man. He lived in a palace, and he had beautiful clothing, ate the best foods. He didn't sleep a half an hour straight. So his hands shouldn't become tummy. The whole night he said Tillim, the whole day he passed in chalice. Do you know that David HaMelech in his generation was the head of the Sanhedrin? David HaMelech served both roles. He was the political leader and the religious leader. No other king until Mashiach shares that duality. He was the Rebbe and the Melech in one man. He was the head of the Sanhedrin. In the Rambam, when he lists the generations of the transmission of the Torah, he lists David HaMelech, not Shlomo, not Yeches, not Chizkiyahu, not Asa. There were a lot of other tzaddikim. David HaMelech was an extraordinary man. And he was... his whole Metzias was, if you want to know why God loves him, he was an amazing, amazing Jew. So the Medrash tells us a story. The Gemara tells us a story. He went to the bath. And of course, when you go to the bath, you go, as they say in American, in your birthday suit. You take off your tzitzis, take off your yarmulke. And remember, in those days, people wore tefillin all day long. In those days, people wore tefillin all day long. They didn't wear the massive tefillin that we had. They had these teeny tiny little tefillin. But people walked around, even in business, all day long with tefillin, which meant that they had the mental power not to be Masiach Das, not to stop thinking about tefillin. I mean, you guys know that traditionally, historically, there were Jews who wore tefillin the whole day. The Alter Rebbe wore tefillin the whole day. The Vilna Gaon wore tefillin the whole day. To wear tefillin the whole day, you have to be incredibly with concentration. Now, the Alter Rebbe was a Rav, the Gra was a Rav, but there were business people who wore tefillin the whole day. To wear tefillin the whole day means the whole day you're not for 1 second taking your mind off the tefillin. That's the halacha. So that's why we don't do it. We put it on tefillin for davening. When davening is over, we take them off. There's a good reason why. Because you're not allowed to be mesach. When you go to the bathhouse, you got to take a fit tefillin. So David wore tefillin the whole day. And by the way, he was a king. So he probably carried in his pocket. What did he carry in his pocket? Anybody know? A Sefer Torah. You know why a king carries in his pocket a Sefer Torah? To make him uncomfortable. That's the reason. To make him uncomfortable. A king has to be very aware of the Eibishter. There was a Jew in the last generation whom the Rebbe knew. His name was Rabbi Meir Shapiro. Rabbi Meir Shapiro was the Lublina Rav. He was a Godel B'Yisrael. He came to the Rebbe's wedding. He gave the Rebbe a wedding gift. The Rebbe said about the Meir Shapiro, he was a Chartkev Chassid. He was a Regina Chassid. It is given Gor Achsidish. The Rebbe knew him personally. Even he was a very Achsidish Yid. The Meir Shapiro was the Meyased of the Daf HaYomi. He made the Daf HaYomi idea. And he also was Meyased if he was Chacham Lublini. He was a great man. The Meir Shapiro was so great that he started to fear his own prominence. So at the end of his life, he started carrying around the Sefer Torah. There's photos. A little Sefer Torah, like the one that Rebbe used, the little white one. He carried this wherever he went. And it was pushed for the sake of humbling himself. But when Meir Shapiro went to the mikveh, he put the Sefer Torah down, you understand? So David HaMelech goes into the merchetz. When at the reine merchetz, and gesehen is naked, he had no clothing, he was naked. Hat gesagt, he says, Weh is mir, woe to me. Was ich steh naked, I'm naked. And he wasn't concerned with the fact that he had no clothes, he was concerned with the fact that he's on a mitzvah. A Yid wears a yarmulke. Okay, yarmulke, you can argue whether it's a mitzvah or not. But a Yid wears tzitzis. And in those days, they used to wear tefillin a whole day. Ubal to the month in their mitzvah von Mila. And David said, wait a minute, I'm not without mitzvahs. I have the Bris Mila. Wherever a Jew goes, he takes his Bris. He was happy. So the Rebbe says, why would David HaMelech satisfy the Bris? The Bris was made years before by his father when he was a baby. Says the Rebbe Zetman der Fund. This is proof. As the mitzvah Mila, when a person does the mitzvah Mila, is a mitzvah nimshechas. It's every second as if you're making the bris. Every second the kedusha in the physical item is renewed. As der Yid hot oiv zich the mitzvah, every second the mitzvah is with you physically. Oich noch der pula samila, even after the circumcision was done. Und der Far, and for this reason, is nisyashve daite from David HaMelech. David HaMelech was calmed when der month when he remembered of the mitzvah this mitzvah. And the Rebbe says, man kann nicht sagen, as David's baruchen. You cannot say David calm down. Is given to leave them kiyam mitzvahs mila von Amal is because he did the mitzvah before. Was had dan mamshach gewen when he was a baby and they did the bris. Kedusha was brought onto him. You can't say that as an adult he enjoyed the kedusha from the mitzvah that happened years before. Weil in them is doch nicht da kein Unterschied von mitzvahs mila bis die mitzvahs von mit andere. Because that were the case, there's many other mitzvahs that he did in the past. David was distinctly happy about Bris because Bris is unique. That not only does it change the physical flesh of the person, but that every second you're a mohel. The Rogat Shabbat has an expression, which I'll talk about tomorrow, which is called Pula Nimshechas. Some mitzvahs that you do, it's as if you're redoing them every instant. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. We got to get these copies.